So now I'm going to hand things over to our presenters today, which include Gretchen Block, our Director of Partner Engagement, Catherine Dunbar, our Vice President of Services and Systems Excellence, Laura Flynn, one of our Quality Enhancement Specialists, and Elizabeth Seitz, our Director of Organizational Excellence. So now we'll get started with the presentation.
Thank you, Seth. So welcome, everyone. Welcome to part 2 of frequently asked questions about accreditation. We're going to start, as we always do, talking about CQL's vision and mission. And of course, our vision is a world of dignity, opportunity, and community for all people. And our mission has been and continues to be that we are dedicated to the definition, measurement, and improvement of personal quality of life. Personal, of course, being specific to each individual person and how they define it. More than 400 organizations have achieved CQL accreditation. This is throughout the United States, Canada, and Ireland. Within the United States, that includes 25 states, including the Tennessee Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities System, and all North Dakota and South Dakota organizations. So we're going to start by talking about questions that kind of fall under the category of the benefits of accreditation. And I am going to turn it over to our MC for the day, our amazing Quality Enhancement Specialist, Laura Flynn.
Hey, everybody. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. As she said, I get the pleasure of asking the majority of the questions today, and I'll be directing them to our wonderful panelists on today's webinar. So we're going to start with the questions that we got ahead of today's webinar and some commonly asked questions of CQL staff, and then we'll move on to those questions like Seth said at the beginning that get put into the Q&A box. So starting off with the benefits of accreditation, we will direct those to Catherine Dunbar, our Vice President of Services and Systems Excellence. And the first question is kind of a big one. So what would you say is the #1 most difficult obstacle to overcome?
So, Laura, we actually get this question quite a bit. And I would say one of the most difficult challenges is for agencies to recognize that we do not expect perfection, that, you know, we want agencies to come to us in the spirit of transparency and wanting to learn. So we don't expect all yes answers to a self-assessment. And we want to work with you to align the basic assurances with your policies, procedures, and practices. Another thing would be just fear of the unknown. You know, maybe an agency has never been through a CQL accreditation, and so they don't know what to expect. We have, you know, resources on our website to help alleviate some of those fears. We have some webinars regarding the accreditation process to help people learn. You know, too, it's agencies kind of getting out of their own way, where this kind of goes with the expectation of perfection, I think, where an agency, since they've never been through an accreditation and don't know what to expect, you know, they kind of have issues with being able to turn things around. So, and then of course we want to, the accreditation process, we want it to work for you and not against you. So, you know, we take a partnership approach to accreditation where we're just supporting organizations to make progress and change expectations within the agency.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all that information. How would you say accreditation is different from licensure, or what regulatory bodies look at then?
This is an easier question, actually. First of all, I would say it's our approach to the review process. You know, again, we take a partnership-driven approach. We take an appreciative inquiry approach. So I think that can certainly be different for agencies to experience. The other thing is that we are not looking at regulation. We're looking at alignment with the basic assurances. So, and sometimes they conflict. So we try to support agencies into resolving some of those conflicts. so that they're in alignment with best practices. So we're not looking at compliance, we're looking at alignment.
Makes a lot of sense. Can you talk a little bit about how the basic assurances and the personal outcome measures align with the US HCBS setting rule guidelines?
So despite the fact that I just said that we're not looking for compliance, there is definitely alignment within the settings rule and the basic assurances and the personal outcome measures. We actually have a really good publication that is called the HCBS Settings Rule Toolkit for States. And this breaks down how the personal outcome measures and the basic assurances align with the settings rule. For all the people who aren't from the states, this is a United States specific federal regulation. So the other thing is that the personal outcome measure has been accepted and recognized by CMS to be a quality metric, which is very, very exciting. And so more states are looking to use the personal outcome measures. And Seth has provided some of those links in the chat box.
That's great. Thank you so much. And if an organization was looking to partner with CQL, why should they do that if they already have their own quality team?
I love this question. So when an agency partners with CQL, they get the benefit of having an external observer come into the organization and validate the things that they're doing. I think that external review is a very important piece. I spent many, many years in the provider world, and you do look at yourself very differently than others look at you. Sometimes, a lot of times, organizations are really, really tough on themselves and don't celebrate or recognize, some of the wonderful things that we've done. So we try to bring that. A lot of times we really push organizations to stretch their learning so they can, be better at providing, quality services that are responsive to people's wants and needs. It's also that accountability piece. Although many quality teams have, their own systems around maintaining quality, it's still valuable because we look at different things than a regulatory body does. We keep people accountable for making progress on their alignment plans. But I think the most beneficial, besides the external validation, is the data piece. We spend a lot of time teaching agencies how to analyze and use data. So I think that's very important for agencies to have the skills and resources to collect, analyze, and use data to push their agency toward better quality outcomes for people.
Absolutely. So many benefits of partnering with CQL, some of them on the screen there. And now we're going to move on to some general accreditation questions. And these are going to be directed towards Gretchen Block, our Director of Partner Engagement. So Gretchen, can you tell us about the different types of accreditation that CQL offers?
Hello, Laura. Yes, absolutely. So CQL offers 4 different types of accreditation. And depending on, where you're at in your quality journey as an organization, and certainly also where you're at in your partnership with CQL, you need to think about what would be best for you. And I am always available to have that conversation to talk about where you're at. Let's start with systems accreditation. I want to talk a little bit about this 1-year accreditation term. This type of accreditation is reserved for organizations that have not yet started services, and they do not intend to start services until they have completed the accreditation process with CQL. Typically, systems accreditation takes somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 to 6 months. And the focus of systems is on building solid systems, and policies so that your future services are good quality. We're here to help you set yourself up for success before that first person walks through the door and is supported by you. We've also got quality assurances accreditation. That's a 3-year accreditation term. And organizations new to a partnership with CQL that are already providing services, that is where we would have you start. This accreditation helps you look at things, honestly, more objectively through the lens, and I would say spirit of quality enhancement. This type of accreditation is not only for organizations that have not worked with CQL previously. We have many organizations that have opted to go through this type of accreditation multiple times. Sometimes, you need a little reset. Maybe post-COVID, it's time to look at your foundation and solidify it. Maybe you've had a lot of leadership changes. Maybe you've had a lot of changes in general at your organization. So I would say quality assurances accreditation would be a good option for you in those cases as well. We've also got person-centered excellence accreditation, and that is a 4-year accreditation term. And for this type of accreditation, we are working with organizations that, for example, are using personal outcome measures in meaningful ways. They already have an established integrated quality management system. So that factor 10 piece, basic assurances factor 10. Certainly there's a strong commitment, or there should be, to engaging your stakeholders in the development and implementation of your organizational plans, your organizational goals. And if you do apply for person-centered excellence accreditation, we'll double check. You will have had to go through at least one cycle of quality assurances accreditation before moving on to person-centered excellence. And then finally, we've got person-centered excellence with distinction. Organizations that have successfully completed at least 2 accreditation cycles with CQL. And if you've got currently certified POM interviewers and or trainers, you've got an established integrated quality management system, and you're ready to challenge yourself in new and exciting ways, PCE with distinction might just be for you. There is a lot of great information about all of the different types of accreditation on our website. Also, our request for engagement, our application for accreditation, has a great rundown of information on each type. For PCE with distinction, if you're thinking about it, certainly reach out, or I would definitely suggest checking out our webinar. The webinar is entitled Enhanced Standards for CQL Accreditation with Distinction. That is a great tool if you're thinking about PCED. Lots of helpful information in there. And if I didn't mention it already, PCE with distinction is also a 4-year accreditation term. And if you're looking for more information, again, reach out to myself and we can talk at any time.
Excellent. Lots of information available. And I think you give a really nice overview of each type. So if somebody was still kind of on the fence, or they didn't know what type of accreditation is best for them, what should they do?
So I think definitely taking a look at all of the resources we have available, and then have that conversation with your team. Talk about where you feel you are, what support you are looking for. Are you ready for a challenge? You also have to double check that you meet the criteria for the different types of accreditation. And again, going back to, organizations, and so many have, when you've dealt with lots of change, lots of, issues, leadership changes, the pandemic, of course, quality assurances is always a good reset, if you will. That's just a great way to kind of see where you're at, and then push yourself back into that mode of quality enhancement, and what should the future look like. We would, be happy to kind of talk with you about where you are, have a conversation with your team, and then, help you make some of those decisions. So ultimately, reflect on where you're at as an organization, and use our tools and information that we have available to make that decision.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So a little bit of a pivot here. Can you talk a little bit about the services that CQL accredits, or the types of services that CQL does not accredit?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad this question was asked. We do talk about it quite a bit. Our expertise lies in supports and services within IDD, substance use, mental health, behavioral health, aging services, employment supports, early intervention. That would be where we've got lots of internal expertise. We do not accredit things like schools, daycares, medical clinics, services for people who are homeless, refugees, maternity homes. Those would not be areas that we would be able to take a look at. Certainly, if an organization has a little bit of both, we can and would look at those services that are in our wheelhouse. And if an organization does need us to specifically call out the services that we did look at, we can be very specific in an accreditation report. And certainly as well in, that proof of accreditation that we provide, a letter, a certificate, we can outline exactly what we did look at. So those would be examples of what we can and cannot accredit. And if you're unsure, if you've got a type of service and you're unsure whether or not CQL can work with you, just give us a call and we'll talk about what that service is and whether or not we can work with you.
Makes sense. How about if an organization only wants their residential services accredited? Does CQL allow for carving out of certain services if they offer different types?
So if they offer, let's say, residential and employment, both, we can accredit, but they would only like residential looked at. Is that kind of where the question is going?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so typically CQL can and does look at all services that fall in our areas of expertise. If an organization would really like to focus on a particular area and wants to carve out some services, we would look at that on a case-by-case basis. So that would be, you would need to have a conversation with us, let us know why you're thinking that would be best for your organization and your stakeholders at this point in time. If that carve out is approved, one thing I want you to keep in mind, that would only be for one accreditation cycle. We would wrap those other services in at your next accreditation renewal. And the other thing that we always recommend, if you do carve out some services, if that is approved, let's say we're talking about those employment services and an organization wanted, to carve those out for one term. Still have your stakeholders, people that are part of those employment supports, have them observe accreditation activities, provide them with the resources and the tools that CQL sends out, still make them part of the process as far as, from an observational and an educational perspective, so that they feel ready when it's time to renew that accreditation down the road.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Gretchen. That was really, really helpful to kind of talk through that example. And great advice if that was the situation for an organization specifically.
Yeah.
So what are some of the costs associated with accreditation, and does CQL offer payment options?
Okay, so the cost of accreditation is going to be based on several factors. We take a look at the number of people receiving services from the organization. We will take a look at all of the different types of services that you offer. And we also look at geography. How geographically spread out are you? Is it a multi-state situation? So if you would like specific pricing for an accreditation with CQL, you can reach out to me directly. I know we'll have our email addresses at the end of the webinar. And I am happy to provide you with those cost estimates based on your specific numbers and information. And yes, we do offer some options related to things like payment plans. So I do want to let you all know that if you do decide to submit a request for engagement, that is the accreditation application. Along with that, there is an initial engagement fee. And then the next time you would be invoiced for, a cost of, for example, your first visit with CQL, our finance person is going to invoice you right around the time that visit happens. So from a timing perspective, your costs are going to fall over multiple fiscal years. When your second visit comes due, you will be invoiced for that at that time. We do and would be happy to set up a payment plan if that's easier for you to break up those payments into, say, monthly or quarterly payments. We'd be happy to do that. We can connect you directly with our finance person and get that set up. We do also offer auto payment. So if you'd like to just, set that up and not have to worry about remembering to submit that payment every month, we would be happy to do that.
Excellent. Can you talk a little bit about if there's a fee, if something needs to be rescheduled, or if someone requests an extension?
Okay. Yeah, so if an organization is scheduled for accreditation, we've got the team in place and on our schedule, and then the organization does request new dates, a delay for some reason, there is a fee associated with that rescheduling. And we do that for several reasons. First of all, those of you that are on the call that have been with us for a while, you may have experienced that during the pandemic, CQL did not charge for rescheduling. The pandemic was simply not something that anybody could control, and it affected everyone. So we did forego the rescheduling fees during the pandemic. But now we're back on track. And, the reason that we do charge those fees, there's a couple of reasons. First of all, there is a lot of behind the scenes work that goes into planning to get an organization onto the schedule and getting everything organized and working with you on those initial preparations. But just as importantly, even more so, most organizations have a very specific idea of the time, the month, even the week within a month that works best for them for their accreditation visit. And we want to, wherever possible, we want to make sure that we can work with you when it's best for you. So when we have a lot of rescheduling, that can cause issues with us not being able to meet the needs of other providers that also need to get onto the schedule. And we need to be fair to all providers. And we don't want people to miss out on the best time frame for their visit. Everybody knows when things are happening at the best time for you, that means honestly a better, more focused accreditation visit. So those are the reasons that we do charge for the rescheduling. We are taking a look at potentially, charging for formal extensions as well. That has not been solidified yet, but if that's something that comes up, we would talk directly with your organization.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that is helpful, I think, especially for those partners that have worked with us throughout the pandemic, just to clarify how that maybe looks a little bit different now. And the rationale, I think, makes a lot of sense. So the last question for you, Gretchen, at least for the time being, is where can somebody find a list of accredited organizations?
Oh, good question. And I love the fact that our website, hats off to Seth, we have got a great spot where you can go and see all of the organizations that are currently accredited. So if you head on over to the accreditation tab, I think when you hit that tab and you scroll, you'll see I think it says accredited organizations. Once you get in there, what's really nice about that is you can search by country, you can search by state, you can search by province. So go check that out and see who might be working with us in your neck of the woods. The other thing that's really nice about that section is you can also see who's accredited by what type. So if you are thinking about, applying for accreditation, maybe you've been with us for QA and you're thinking about PCE, or maybe you're thinking about PCED, maybe you want to reach out to a provider that has been through it and get their perspective, or you'd like us to try to make some connections. We'd be happy to do that too. But I think that section of the website is valuable for, networking purposes. So go check it out. It's great.
Absolutely. Great advice. I think partnering or getting together with other organizations is always a great way to kind of learn about it and kind of get someone else's perspective. So love that advice. And thank you so much, Gretchen, for all
Thanks,
of that.
Laura. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And now we're going to move on over to Elizabeth Seitz. She's our Director of Organizational Excellence, and talk a little bit about getting prepared for accreditation. So, Elizabeth, what can an organization expect from an accreditation visit, regardless of what kind they're seeking?
Oh, good question, Laura, and something that we get asked a lot. So there are some core things, no matter what type of accreditation you're looking at, that you're always going to get. And number one, as Catherine has already spoken to, it's an appreciative inquiry approach. We're looking at strengths. That's what we want our focus to be. We will look at strengths and see how those strengths can also be used, number one, to celebrate, but number two, to apply to areas of potential opportunity within the organization. Also, the partnership. CQL takes a partnership approach like no other. Again, like Catherine spoke to, we're not regulators, we're not surveyors, we're not there to look for deficits. We are there to partner with the organization to see what you're doing well, where your strengths are, where the opportunities are, and how can we support you to move forward. You can also expect knowledgeable CQL staff that have worked as providers. So you're going to get staff that have been on both sides of the table. And in fact, a good number of our CQL staff have gone through CQL accreditation as a provider before, so they also bring that experience as well. And we have a number of staff of our CQL staff that still work as providers. So you're going to get a lot of good knowledge and experience from the CQL staff that you are working with during your visit. You're also going to get honesty and transparency. We're not going to, hold anything from you. When we see something, we're going to talk to you about it, be it good, be it an opportunity, be it something we want you to continue to work on. We're definitely going to be open, honest, and transparent with you, because that's the way that a provider gets better, is when there is transparency on what's going well and where there lies opportunities. You're also going to get from our amazing staff, you're always going to get a willingness and desire to answer questions and to help you understand best practice approaches. Our staff are just the absolute best, and they want to help. That is their goal, is to help you move forward. And they do this also by sharing resources. If you need something, they are on it. They are so good about sharing what they have, looking through our library of resources, reaching out to their CQL colleagues, or, as Gretchen mentioned before, even other organizations that may be able to help you in the areas that you would like assistance. And then, of course, we have the actual activities that you can expect from any accreditation visit. So now there are nuances. There are some different things as you kind of move through different accreditation types, but you can typically expect daily debriefings so that there's no surprises at the end of the week. You're also you can expect focus groups, conversations with the people you support, with staff, with leadership, with stakeholders. We love to talk to people, and that's how we're gonna learn a lot about what is going on at the organization. You can also expect, no matter again the type of accreditation that you're looking at, conversations around each of those basic assurances factors, learning about systems and practices in each of those areas. Personal outcome measures interviews are also another way that we learn about people that you support and learn about the services being provided. And then, of course, there's always going to be visits with people where they receive services, so that we can see firsthand how you're supporting people within their day-to-day lives. So those are typically the things that you can expect from an accreditation visit.
An excellent overview of kind of the general things that go on. Can you tell us where somebody would learn more about each of those basic assurance factors that you spoke of?
Absolutely. We have an amazing webinar series that was done about 4 years ago, I think, on each of the 10 factors of the basic assurances. And Seth will put that link in the chat box so that you can get to that directly. They are on our website, all 10 of them. But these 10 webinars, this is where I always suggest that people start. These 10 webinars go into more depth on each of those factors. They discuss the structure of the basic assurances. They talk about process and evidence, and then go into a deeper discussion of the indicators and probes found within each factor. They also provide information on resources related to that specific factor. So again, those 10 one-hour webinars are absolutely fantastic to just kind of get that basic kind of knowledge and understanding of the basic assurances. And we also offer 1- and 2-day trainings on the basic assurances. I love these trainings. They are so much fun to facilitate. They just provide a lot of great information. These are paid trainings. They're absolutely worth it. But of course that, all depends on what you feel that you need to help you understand the basic assurances. And these can be done both virtually or in person. So there's a lot of options there. And of course, feel free to reach out if you have questions about cost or what those look like, those sorts of things.
Wonderful. What are CQL's expectation for completion of the basic assurances self-assessment then?
This is a really important component of any accreditation type. There are 3 things. We expect timeliness, thoroughness, and honesty. And I'll talk a little bit about each of those things. When you engage with CQL, and your organization is put on the schedule for accreditation, and you get your letter of engagement that lists the week of your accreditation and some other information. It also lists in there when your basic assurances self-assessment is due for completion in our portal data system. So the completion of the basic assurances self-assessment, it is expected to be completed by that date noted on the letter of engagement, or by the date agreed upon, if different, by the provider, by the organization, and by the lead quality enhancement specialist assigned to your review. You may agree upon a different date, but it's important that no matter what that date, you take it seriously and that you stick to it, because on the other end of it, our staff that are part of that review really need time to look through that self-assessment, review it, understand it, to get a sense of your organization. And that takes time. So another thing is we expect that it's completed thoroughly. And it needs to be completed thoroughly to give the reviewers the information that they need to get started, to understanding who you are and what you're all about and what they want to ask while they're there. If there's no information written in those comment boxes in portal on the self-assessment, that provides us nothing. There's really not a whole lot that we can do with that. So we really need information. You know, with that, we always say, when you mark yes or no to if a probe is in place or not, we expect you to be honest about that. Because it's okay to say no. You don't have to say yes. We don't expect to see yeses all the way down those 300 plus probes. We expect that if it's not in place, that you mark a no, because it's okay if you do. But we also expect thoroughness in the comments. If you're talking about a policy, name that policy box so we know where to go to find that information. If you refer to an assessment or discovery tool or a training or a committee or something along that lines, we expect that you're going to write that in the box so we know exactly what we're looking for and we can have a good sense of what is happening. That just helps the CQL team prepare. So when they do come to you, they're on site, they're during, it's during the visit, it can just really lend to a more robust discussion of what's happening at your organization. Plus, if there's something that you mark a no to, you can simply put in the comment box that you want guidance in that area. And then our CQL staff can prepare in advance with resources and other things to be able to help you. So another good reason to be really thorough in the information. And of course, you want to complete it as a team. You know, one person may enter the information into portal, but really this should be done by a team of people, and input and evidence should come from more than just one person. So lots of things that we expect from that self-assessment.
Yeah, that was really good information, and I think really speaks to how to make the on-site portion of the review go as efficiently and effectively as possible for the organization and the reviewer. So
absolutely.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Kind of along the same lines, can you talk about the expectations for document sharing in advance of the visit?
Yeah, and like you said, Laura, you know, kind of along the same lines, we expect honesty, timeliness, and thoroughness. You know, number one, honesty. If you don't have something that we request, it's okay. Just let us know. You know, it's not a big deal. Don't try to say, oh, I'll get it to you, and then never produce it. If you don't have it, it is absolutely fine to say, we don't have that, or we don't do that. Again, it's just another way for us to know how to support you. With the timeliness, just like the self-assessment, it's really helpful because, again, it gives the CQL reviewers enough time in advance to take a look at everything, make sure that they're being really thorough in their review, you know, just, you know, and be ready to come to you with questions, with thoughts, with ideas, those sorts of things. Now, how things are shared is really determined between the lead reviewer and the organization, and we are absolutely flexible, and we'll always look for the best sharing method for each organization, which could be putting things into portal, could be using Microsoft Teams, it could be a shared drive, a box site, whatever works for the organization. We are more than happy to work with you on how to best share documents, and of course to share it you know, confidentially. So of course, the timeline on when things should be uploaded prior to the accreditation is also determined between the lead reviewer and the organization. And then I just specifically wanted to talk just really quickly to some documents that provide rich information in advance of the accreditation visit. Now, anybody that's been through accreditation knows that we're going to ask for tons and tons of things, because that's what we do. We like to look and see things. We like to know what's going on. But things that you can share in advance that are very, very helpful are things like your policies. People's plans. If you have a secure way of sharing documents, it is very helpful to see individual support plans, behavior support plans, if you utilize those. It's great to see meeting minutes, any kind of meetings, human rights, IR, or incident review type meetings, risk management, safety, quality meetings. Those are extremely helpful. It's great to see your employee manual. It's great to see discovery tools and assessments. These things are just really helpful in advance. And of course, there is so much more that we ask for, and those are discussed during your planning calls with your lead reviewer.
Thank you. How about some ideas for some ways that a variety of different people can participate in the development and implementation of an organization's philosophy, mission, policies, things like that?
Oh, Laura, that's a whole webinar in itself. And actually, Seth will probably put the link into a recent webinar that we did titled Accreditation and Organizational Culture, an Inseparable Pair. A fantastic webinar hosted by CQL, along with the contribution of one of our accredited partners. So that is one that I definitely recommend that you take a look at to really give you a good answer to that question. But of course, you know, we're always going to recommend that you hold focus groups with people, get lots of different, you know, input, you know, especially when doing your basic assurances self-assessment. So, so definitely watch that webinar. I could talk about this for a long time, but I want to make sure that I leave time for the last couple of areas that we want to talk about. So.
Absolutely. Just real quickly in this last part of this section, if there's an organization that's been through 2 QA accreditation cycles and they want to apply for PCE, how would you recommend that they prepare for that?
What I would recommend is start with your basic assurances self-assessment as you would a QA accreditation. I would suggest familiarizing yourself with shared values because that's added. That's an added component to PCE accreditation. So take a look at shared values along with our What Really Matters manual, which is a key component of person-centered excellence and PCE with distinction. Reach out to CQL. If you already have a relationship with a specific quality enhancement specialist, talk to them or reach out to one of us and we can guide you. Like Gretchen had said, also, you can reach out to another organization who has achieved PCE and talk with them. Ask them maybe sit in on a stakeholder day if they're going through their accreditation anytime soon. That's a great way to see kind of what that looks like. And then, of course, start thinking about what stakeholders you would want to invite to a stakeholder event, as that is, you know, a difference between QA and PCE accreditation is the addition of that stakeholder event. So that is where I would tell you to kind of start.
Yeah, good advice, I think. Let's tackle some questions that have to do with what happens after the first accreditation visit. So what can an organization expect from the second or third visit during an accreditation cycle?
Okay, so I'm not gonna be as long-winded as what I kind of thought that I would, because I want to leave Catherine time to kind of tackle our last category of questions. But from any visit, you're going to expect everything that we talked about before, about what to expect in a visit. We're expecting from any visit 2 or visit 3 progress. We're expecting movement forward. That's foundational. From any of these visits as well, you can expect that a CQL staff will reach out to you to set up a date prior to the date that it's due. So the CQL staff assigned to that visit 2 or visit 3 will work with you on the best dates for your organization for that visit. And that visit could be virtual or in person. It just kind of depends on a number of different factors, but they will let you know which type it is when they reach out to you. So Just quick, I won't go into a lot of detail, but QA accreditation, there is one, what we call a visit 2, and that's midpoint in the 3-year term. And then person-centered excellence and PCED have 2 additional visits. One 12 to 18 months after the visit 1, and then one at the 36-month mark or the 3-year mark. So main thing is progress. We're expecting to see movement forward.
That makes a lot of sense. And for anybody that might be worried about not getting accredited during their initial visit, what happens if they don't get that right away?
If they don't get that right away, well, I want to start by just saying we have the philosophy in meeting organizations where they're at, but sometimes an alternative to full accreditation is needed. So at the visit 1, if maybe an organization isn't quite there, they might see what we call a probationary accreditation. And the length of time of that probationary accreditation and the requirements are determined by the review team. And the CQL team will be open and honest about the concerns and the steps that need to be taken before a full accreditation could be granted. For any visit 2 or visit 3, we have what we call a provisional accreditation, and that would be given when really there's just simply a lack of progress from the visit 1 on any kind of basic assurances, POM, or person-centered excellence plans. And again, that length of time is determined by the CQ, and requirements is determined by the CQL reviewer.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for all that information, and for Seth putting in all those wonderful resources that people can go to get more information. And then we're going to send it back to Catherine, kind of looking ahead. What are some of the topics that CQL is going to be working on?
Oh, thanks, Laura. I love this question because it's so exciting. What we have kind of brewing in the background. So some of the things that we are going to be releasing content on are things like building communities, relationships, money management, application of data, supported decision making, supporting people as they age. We're going to do some things around technology, some things around DSPs, of course, inclusive practices, and lots of other things. So keep your eye out for informational emails about those upcoming topics, because they're all going to be very exciting.
Yeah, lots of exciting things.
Yes.
Are the basic assurances going through a revision?
Yes, Laura, they are. And we are very, very excited about this because we are trying to make the basic assurances more generalized, where they can reach different organizations in the services that they provide. We're getting beyond the time where an agency offers only residential services or only day services. They're offering a lot different things that family supports and employment supports, just medical supports in some cases, or aging supports. So there's lots of other things that we want to take into consideration. It is a long process. We're very, very thorough. We've already had a number of focus groups with people both familiar and not familiar with the basic assurances. In those focus groups, we've had providers, people receiving supports, of course, family members, board members, all different types of stakeholders we've included in those. Right now, we are reviewing the statistical analysis results to make sure that we're in line with everything. So that's where we're at in the process now. There is no official release, a timeline released at this point, and I don't want to jinx us, so I'm not even going to offer any other information on that besides stay tuned.
That makes sense. I know it's been a long process, and want to make sure that it's really, really ready for release when it actually is. So thank you for all of that updated information. Can you speak to how the shared values are used in CQL accreditation?
Yeah, and like Elizabeth, I'm gonna try to keep this quick. We are not currently revising the shared values, okay? Emphasis on the word currently. But they're still a really important part of PCE. So, and PCE with distinction. And they're introduced in the quality assurances. So that's the short answer, I guess. But they're a very important piece of the accreditation process.
Yeah, absolutely. And then can people expect to see accreditation webinars in 2024?
Absolutely. If you have any suggestions as we plan for those, please drop those in the Q&A box. We would love to hear your suggestions. And we also collect questions for this webinar, the Frequently Asked Questions webinar, all the time. It's pretty constant. So if you have specific questions or specific topics, then just let us know what those are, and we'll try to work those out. So now,
Fantastic.
yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, that was it. Thank you so much
Okay.
for all of that information.
Thank you. So the next few slides are about how to connect with us. We have a really good way of kind of keeping everything out of your inbox. You can simply subscribe to very specific topics, accreditation, training, and so you're not, we won't inundate you with information unless you want us to. But these resources coming to you are excellent. You can connect with us. Here are all our social media sites. Seth is wonderful at posting good news stories and information on all those sites. So please feel free to connect with us. And this is all of our contact information for those here on this webinar right now. Just an FYI, all of us can be reached first initial, last name, and then domain at thecouncil.org. So if you know a staff, you have a relationship with that person, that is our email convention that we use. So questions that we've had dropped in the inbox.
Okay, we do have a few. The first question, is there a similar HCBS toolkit for Canada? Seth did share a link. We don't have anything that broadly covers all of Canada, but we do have the Ontario Crosswalk of Quality that might be helpful. Any of our panelists have anything additional to share related to that question?
Not at this time.
Mhm.
There was a question, Kate, that you answered, if you want to touch on it
Sure.
again. Does
Sure.
PCE with distinction require 2 cycles of any accreditation or 2 cycles of PCE?
Sure. So we would prefer at least 1 cycle of PCE. And it can be 1 cycle of PCE and 1 cycle of QA. That's perfectly acceptable. The reason why we want that is because there are so many foundational tools and activities that happen during a PCE. So there's a more in-depth review of the shared values. There's a stakeholder meeting. There are just different components of a PCE that will be also included in the PCED.
Okay, thank you. Seth, I believe you shared a link to our Basic Assurances webinar series. Someone wanted that, and it is a great resource if you are thinking about applying for accreditation, if you're going through accreditation for the first time, and frankly, if you've been through accreditation multiple times, it's still a great refresher. So Seth, thank you for sharing that. did have some questions about what happens when we're getting closer to our current accreditation expiring. What do we need to do? When do we need to do it? So you will receive a reminder that your accreditation is expiring, typically 6 months or so ahead of that expiration date. And we would encourage you to submit your application as soon as possible after that, so that we can you know, get you on the schedule for the time, the week that works best for you. And if you want to double check dates or anything else, feel free to reach out to us at any point and we can talk with you more about your organizational specifics. Seth, just double checking, are we sharing a recording of this webinar?
Yes, we always get that question, and we will be sending out an email that has links to the PDF version of the presentation slides, as well as the webinar recording that'll be sent out in a couple of weeks. And also, we know that we post a lot of chat links into the chat box during the webinar. We also include those in the email follow-up, so don't feel like you have to click through them or copy and paste them. We send those out as well.
Perfect. I think that covers everything that we've gotten.
Yeah, it looks like that's all the open questions that we have
Just in
for
time.
today. I think we're hitting the top of the hour, so we want to be respectful of everyone's time, and we just want to say thank you to all of you for taking the time out of your day to attend this webinar and likely some of our previous 2023 webinar series sessions. We're looking forward to 2024 and a whole new set of webinars for accreditation. And obviously, thank you to our panelists today for answering all of the attendee questions. A lot of good information was shared. And I know everyone's very appreciative of all of it. So thank you. Thank you, CQL team. Thank you, attendees. We'll talk to you all soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.